the single most important thing that happened in this epic was the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. That basically was crossing of the chasm, which said that Bitcoin is not a multi-$100 billion asset class. Bitcoin is a 10 to $100 trillion asset class. So that was a 10x to 100x. And that will ripple to the rest of the world, right? However the US goes, it'll go to Singapore, the UAE, the EU, and there are even signs that it's already rippled into Hong Kong, but it may ripple back into China. And so ultimately, I think 2024 will definitely be viewed as a pivotal year, but I don't see how you can view it as anything other than incredibly auspicious for the adoption of Bitcoin by nation states, large banks, institutional investors. And there's just an explosion in global consensus that this is an idea whose time has come. And we'll be living with, a lot of other crypto ideas along the way for quite a while to come, I think. But none of them are threatening to us at this point. I think Bitcoin has gotten too mature, has become too powerful to be threatened by another crypto. I think this is going to be a case of a rising tide is going to lift all boats.
Forget BlackRock and the biggest financial institutions in the world, nation states and countries are now coming for your Bitcoin. This is the latest message out from MicroStrategy CEO and founder Michael Saylor. In his latest interview with What Bitcoin Did, Saylor made one point clear. We're going to look back on 2024 as a groundbreaking year for Bitcoin. 2024 will be viewed as a year that the US government and the SEC approved a spot Bitcoin ETF, a message to the world that Bitcoin isn't a $1 trillion asset class, but rather it's a $100 trillion asset class, a 100x from current prices. Within the interview, Saylor broke down all the recent developments for Bitcoin, focusing on how the sudden attitude shift from the United States on Bitcoin and crypto is going to ripple across the world. Last week, we saw a complete 180 from the US government on multiple forms of crypto legislation, including the approval of the Ethereum spot ETF. This was something that Saylor was not expecting. In earlier interviews, he said he didn't think one would ever be approved. However, with the sudden change in tone from regulators, Saylor believes this will be a case of a rising tide lifts all boats, and it will encourage nation states and central banks around the world to begin purchasing Bitcoin. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video where Saylor breaks down like never before how all the figures you believe about the economy, inflation, GDP, unemployment are actually false and why Bitcoin makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. But before that, today's video is brought to you by Crypto.com. If you still haven't got a crypto card yet, you're living in the past. With traditional cards, you have to pay annual fees, they take percentages, and some banks charge you at every transaction. That's not the case with the Crypto.com Visa card. With a Crypto.com Visa card, you can spend your crypto anywhere you want, and the benefits are insane. With your Crypto.com Visa card, you can earn up to 5% back in Crow rewards on every transaction, enjoy 100% cashback on Spotify, Netflix, and Amazon as a new customer for the first 6 months, get complimentary access to airport lounges and elevate your travel experience, and flaunt your style with the sleek and stylish metal card. Now, Crypto.com is currently giving out a $25 new user sign-up bonus for Jamie Tree viewers. Here's how to get your $25 bonus and start earning up to 5% back. First off, download the Crypto.com app by clicking the first link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen now. Second, sign up using our referral code nutty for your instant $25 bonus. Thirdly, once you've signed up and have been approved, here's how to get your Crypto.com card. Tap the card tab at the right of the navigation panel, select your preferred card tier based on the required cardholder Crow staking or lockup amount. I personally have a Ruby Red card. The only requirement is you lock up 400 USD of Crow for 180 days, which is then unlocked. Then accept terms and conditions. And you'll have to have sufficient Crow in your crypto wallet for the 180-day stake or lockup. Finally, submit your delivery address. Then you'll get your Crypto.com Visa card, start making transactions, earning rewards, and enjoying the perks. So to claim your $25 bonus and earn up to 5% back on all your spending, click that first link in the description to get started with Crypto.com today. Now, back to the video.
We all thought it'd be denied 2 weeks ago. I thought it would be denied. The entire consensus, even the Ethereans thought it'd be denied. So that brings everything to a head. The bill goes to the House, it passes, Then it moves into the Senate and it passes. That's a shocker. And then, of course, Godzilla walks into the room, and the Trump card, right, is Trump. And Trump becomes crypto engaged, and Trump comes down in favor of crypto. If you believe in crypto, you better vote for me. And then the next thing you see is the polls flip, and the Republican frontrunner is ahead of the incumbent, right? And when Trump flips Biden in the polls, now you see the entire Democratic Party flip. And so I think in the past few days, this literally happened over the weekend, I think. This weekend, I think you saw the political wind change direction. This became a political issue. And the strategists think, wait a minute, 80 million people with a Coinbase account, or 80 million Americans with crypto and a big crypto lobby, and we're going to be on the wrong side of this. There is no one that's going to vote for you because you're anti-crypto or anti-Bitcoin. No, there are no votes. There is an army of people that'll vote against you. So I think the White House changed policies, the Democratic Party changed policies. The signal of that was Chuck Schumer in the Senate voting in favor of the repeal of SAB 121. And you can see why he might. But basically, Wall Street's adopted crypto. Wall Street's adopted Bitcoin. They want to custody it. They want to securitize it. And the crypto industry is just fed up. I mean, they've had enough. And, you know, it's like, I think Sun Tzu says, you've got your enemy cornered, leave them with an escape. Okay, I think that the regulators overplayed their hand in this regard, or a regulator overplayed their hand. If you basically got an industry that represents 80 million Americans and their only option is to fight you or die, it's a battle to the death, right? It's that's a very difficult fight. You polarized it. So I think that the dam burst this weekend, Monday morning. The policy of the administration flipped, and now I think they realize that they're best to accommodate, give Wall Street what it wants, give the banks what they want. I think there's a lot of details yet to be figured out, like what will happen next. But all of the signals in the market suggest that the Republicans will be violently pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin, and the existing administration, the Democrats, will move to accommodate. I think 2 weeks before, the world looked like Bitcoin was going to be the only asset securitized and offered as a spot ETF by the Wall Street establishment, and it was going to spread as the one legitimate crypto asset. I think right now, the best expectation is the crypto asset class will be legitimized, supported by both parties. There's an industry. Crypto is an asset class. There's an entire range of use cases, 24/7 digital trading, digital art, NFTs, tokens, decentralized this, functionality, DeFi. There's a lot of things that will be considered in a more open light. And Bitcoin will be the leader of the crypto asset class. And if you look at it and say, well, is this good for Bitcoin or not? Yeah, I think it's good for Bitcoin. I think, in fact, it may be better for Bitcoin because I think that we are politically much more powerful, supported by the entire crypto industry, right? They obviously have a lot of political power, a lot of users, and they serve as another line of defense for Bitcoin. So I think instead of someone saying, well, there's one crypto asset, maybe I'll allocate 1% of my money to it, I think mainstream investors might say, oh, there's a crypto asset class now, and maybe we'll allocate 5% or 10% to the crypto asset class, but Bitcoin will be 60% or 70% of that. So I actually think it could accelerate institutional adoption. It's good for marketing. Yeah, there'll be all these other things that'll happen, and you just kind of have to rethink, all of your models and move forward in a new world. With the caveat that I looked at, last night, FIT 21, the crypto bill was passed in a landslide by the House of Representatives. Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it was like 2/3, 1/3. So it was a 66% or something majority. It's a 484-page bill. Okay, so I started reading it, and reading, it's hard to read 500 pages and internalize it, but I'm sure they haven't read it.
Yeah.
And it goes to the Senate, and so I imagine there'll be a lot of debate about what goes into 484 pages. What clearly they want to do is they want to create a regulatory process to establish a digital commodity and define decentralization and define a digital commodity and treat the rest. I think that, again, this will be political, but the difference is instead of one party has taken the position, limited Bitcoin, nothing else. We're afraid of Bitcoin. The only explanation I can come up with for why you would believe in Bitcoin but be so resistant to Bitcoin options, in-kind creates, and Bitcoin custody for banks is Bitcoin's so good, we don't want it to go too fast. We don't want it to grow too quickly because it might destabilize the traditional system. But one party was limited Bitcoin and the other party was crypto. And now we've got one party, we're defined by crypto advocacy, very pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin, aggressively pro-crypto. And the second party, responsible crypto, responsible Bitcoin, but we're enthusiastic, right? I mean, that's how the playing field has shifted. And that will ripple to the rest of the world, right? However the US goes, it'll go to Singapore, the UAE, the EU, and there are even signs that it's already rippled into Hong Kong, but it may ripple back into China. And so ultimately, I think 2024 will definitely be viewed as a pivotal year, but I don't see how you can view it as anything other than incredibly auspicious for the adoption of Bitcoin by nation states, large banks, institutional investors. And there's just an explosion in global consensus that this is an idea whose time has come, and we'll be living with a lot of other crypto ideas along the way for quite a while to come, I think. But none of them are threatening to us at this point. I think Bitcoin has gotten too mature, has become too powerful to be threatened by another crypto. I think this is going to be a case of a rising tide is going to lift all boats. Once you understand the technology, how do you empower someone with whatever, all their money in their head or in their hands? And how do you empower someone to move all their assets from here to there without asking permission? That leads you to the ideology. The ideology is based upon, a protocol that empowers technology, that creates an asset. But ultimately, the ideology is, self-sovereignty, privacy, individual rights, the sovereignty of the individual, and also property rights and freedom. And I think that once I got involved, I started looking for a solution to a treasury problem. So I kind of got involved because I had an economic problem. And then in the research, it leads you to understand the technology and appreciate the combination of cryptography and proof of work and energy. And then once you start following all the Bitcoiners, you get drawn into the ideology. And then in the ideology, people start to cause you to question basics. For example, what is inflation? I would have accepted the party line inflation is CPI. And then as soon as you realize inflation is not CPI or inflation, and you can generate as many inflation metrics as you wish to generate, then you realize, well, I can just cherry pick any inflation. And so the best possible situation is to run an economy with 12% inflation while I convince the people that it's 2% inflation, because the cost of capital really is 12%, but they think it's 2%. And the difference of the 10% I get to give to anybody else I want, right? Every pension is indexed at CPI, so I'm raising your pensions at 2%. I'm inflating the money supply at 10 or 12%. That leads you to question a lot of things. Well, if the inflation rate isn't correct, then maybe GDP isn't correct. how do you actually measure gross domestic product, if it's not inflation adjusted? And I think the CEO of Microsoft, made a point, a very quiet point no one noticed, which is, the economy is shrinking. It's not growing. In nominal terms, people will perceive the economy to be growing, but once you put in place the right inflation rate, the economy is shrinking. Nobody in the modern era wants to admit that their national economy is shrinking due to political policy. Well, that leads you to start looking at all these other things like PPI indexes. What does that really mean? And then what about unemployment? How can you have an unemployment rate of 2 or 3% when 45% of the people don't have a job? Like what's the definition of unemployment? Well, we only count people as unemployed if they wish they weren't. So all of these metrics that talking heads on TV, they argue about, they're all synthetic faux metrics, and you can build an entire world and a trading strategy and an ideology around synthetic, cherry-picked false metrics. Or once you discover Bitcoin, you start thinking, well, if the GDP's not right and the unemployment's not right and the inflation's not right, then what is right? And so I think that the Bitcoin opened that door for me, and it caused me to question a bunch of other things I'd taken for granted. And that leads you to, read, The Creature from Jekyll Island. And then it leads you to read everything by Murray Rothbard, A History of Economic Thought. And then you discover Austrian economics. And then it causes you to go back and you rethink all of history. Like I go back and I reread the history of the world. If you read Durant's Story of Civilization, he wrote 15,000 pages on the world. Most people didn't read 15,000 pages of world history when they were 18 years old. But if you did, you didn't understand inflation, and you didn't understand money, and you didn't understand politics, and you hadn't lived through a war. And so you misinterpret, or you shallowly interpret what's going on. When you go back and you read history again, after you've lived through an actual war or a currency meltdown, or you live in 2020, right? You see one part of the economy being destroyed, another part of the economy being lifted up by the political action of a few people. And then you watch the media and you realize there's one set of media that doesn't even recognize there's a problem. And there's another set of media that takes a totally different point of view. And then you realize that news is just a curated stream of opinions. And if you wanted one set of opinions, you could watch one set of channels. If you want another set of opinions, you watch another set of channels. Once you realize that so many things you took for granted aren't necessarily so, and it caused you to open your eyes toward a bunch of things in the world. There's two responses you could have. One response is to note there's 100 things that are wrong with the world and start to complain about all 100 of them. And the other response is just to pick one single thing that you can do that might make a difference. And I'm of the opinion that I could complain about 100 things in the world that I disagree with, that I would talk about with you privately, but the world doesn't want my opinion, and it doesn't care. Those things aren't going to change based upon me complaining about them. I don't have any real power. And I also think, I remember the words of Hayek. You want to take money away from the state, you can't do it, in a frontal assault. You have to do it in a sly, roundabout way. Mm-hmm. How do you fight something which is so entrenched in the civilization that the harder you push, the harder it pushes back? And the answer is you have to introduce a new idea that will go viral. So, for example, Bitcoin, is a new idea. You could view it as freedom technology, a freedom virus. And you can also view it as a monetary virus to give sound money to the world. So if I want to give freedom and sovereignty and dignity and empowerment to 8 billion people, I don't loudly scream that their overlords ought to stop leaning on them. You know, I'm not going to topple every government and every corporate overlord and everything. So what I do is I introduce a new technology that spreads virally. And if I want to give property rights to 8 billion people, I introduce a new technology. And when you introduce a new technology, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. I think when you say, you're wrong, you're stupid, I'm smart, do it my way, change your way. The louder you say that, the harder someone pushes back against you. You create inflammation,
Yeah.
right? And there are examples in our political system where certain political parties, their position is the other party is wrong, we're right, they're stupid, we're smart, do it our way, and give us credit and blame them, right? And so that's an inflammatory approach. I think that you could spend $100 billion trying to jam your idea on someone that doesn't want it. They will just crowdsource $100 billion of power to push back, and that's called fighting a war, right? You're just going to war. I think that the more elegant way is to introduce a new idea, you know, Bitcoin. What is it good for? Oh, it'll be good for your family. What else? It'll be good for your company. What else? Oh, it'll help your bank. What else? It'll help your state. What else? It'll help your city. It'll help your country. What else? Oh, you know, you want to fight a war? It'll help you win the war. You know, you disagree with X, it'll help your political party. You want to win an election, it'll help you win, right? What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is good for you, right? Bitcoin is empowerment technology that will allow you to be the best version of yourself. Who's losing? Nobody's losing. Who's wrong? Nobody's wrong. Just everybody's just better with this. It's better living through technology. And my approach is, I think about the one thing that can make the world a better place. And I think about the one thing I might accomplish. Like I don't think, like MicroStrategy spent $7.5 billion buying Bitcoin. I don't think that if we spent $7.5 billion on the next 100 things you think are wrong with the world, I don't think it'd make a difference. I think that you would just spend the money and the counter side, the other opposition, would spend an equivalent amount of money to negate the amount of money you're spending. So I don't think you change the world through full frontal attacks, and I don't think you change it through aggressive confrontation. I think you change it through elegant, diplomatic innovation. That's my observation. If I look at the history of the world, the people that made the world a better place, the people that introduced steel, electricity, antibiotics, the smallpox vaccine, airplanes, steam engines, internal combustion engines, motors, Starlink. These are all very elegant things, and they're non-controversial at the end of the day. Maybe early on people are afraid of new tech, but if you look back and you say, well, just give me an example of someone that righteously opposed electricity, who history deems was on the right side of that. I think generally history views you on the wrong side of technical innovation. And so you'll win over time if you want to change the world with technology. Technology is bipartisan. If you want to change the world with religion, or you want to change the world with ideology or politics, or you want to change the world with critique, or violence, I think the world has a way of pushing back.
So there's Michael Saylor's latest insights on how the landscape for Bitcoin is changing dramatically. As nation states and countries will begin to enter the Bitcoin fray, 2024 will undoubtedly go down as a groundbreaking year for Bitcoin. The recent approval of the Ethereum spot ETF and the sudden shift in the US government's attitude towards Bitcoin and crypto signify a rising tide that could lift all boats, encouraging central banks and nation states worldwide to begin purchasing Bitcoin. For those who want to stay up to date with the latest in the crypto and Bitcoin world, consider subscribing to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It covers the latest expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis, all in a nutshell. Click the first link in the description to join over 60,000 others and becoming a better crypto investor right now. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, all the best.